A very interesting topic today with a fabulous panel. I'm a associate professor at BI Norwegian Business School and senior research fellow with Accenture. And together with me today, I have Yeva and Thomas. Yeva, could you say just two things about your work and your responsibilities, and the same with you, Angelo, before we hit off on the topic?
Sure, Vegard. So I work in Telenor, one of the largest mobile operators in the world, and I'm working in R&D department of Telenor, heading the AI and analytics team.
Perfect, thank you. Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Name is Thomas Englaro, Nordic Director for Innovation, responsible for Watson, IBM's AI platform and solution worldwide. I hope we have a lot of fun, and I hope I don't mess up Yeva's name ever again, like I did in our practice session.
and for the sake of simplicity, Yeva and myself will keep the last name out of the discussion. So AI, there's a lot of buzz out there on AI, and what is it really, and how does it affect us as leaders and our organizations? That's the topic of today. Well, since you've invited an academic, you will get a definition right off the bat here. So what is AI? It's technology that can sense, comprehend, act, and learn. And that doesn't sound like technology. Well, it could be anything. Well, it's any intelligent actor has those properties. So the ability to sense something about the environment, with AI, that's different types of data streams, right? It could be traditional data streams, it could be sensors, it could be all kinds of stuff. Then comprehend means what are the patterns in that data that tells us something about cause and effect and how we can predict things, right? And we turn that into action. Action could be anything from a red flag, this is something out of the ordinary, all the way to autonomous action, like a trading robot or an autonomous car or something like that, and anything in between of some kind of advisory role. The final thing is still, I think, the main distinction here, and that is the learning part. Because with intelligent technology, it is learning, and it's learning from experience. And what is experience for a computer? Well, that's data. So you learn, it improves by feeding it better data and by learning from a number of iterations and new sources of data, and also by measuring the outcomes of previous actions by the system. So then typically an AI system involves a number of technologies, a collection of technologies, so it collectively can sense, comprehend, act, and learn. And hopefully the three of us can sense, comprehend, act, and learn as well, Thomas. You're in charge of AI and innovation in one of the world's largest technology companies, and it's at the forefront of both in terms of inventing and innovating on the technology and also in applying it, and you meet a lot of companies out there. If you were to give us a brief overview, where is AI today, and what type of impact are we seeing in the market?
All right, so let's put a real world picture on the deployment of AI. AI is not the Terminator, right? The whole movie thing. That's not where we're at, but that's where we could potentially go. So that's just the real world update. The second one is that in terms of deployments of AI around the world, what we're seeing is most deployments are companies being conservative. They don't want to deploy the Terminator scenario of AI. They're doing more like chatbots. So when you call into a bank or you text and you do a chat window on the web page of a bank, you ask a question, you're interacting with an AI and things like that. So it's not as advanced, but it's going slow. But I wanted to piggyback on one important thing, and I think everybody has to understand how important what your statement was on data and the quality of the data. Mm. We've had so many projects, and it will continue. And I'm going to pick on healthcare. All right, because times of COVID, let's pick on the doctors and nurses and administrations, right? Data, when you said the data has to be good, let's do it very simple. When a nurse takes the patient's blood pressure, one nurse may take the blood pressure, say it's 160/90, and they'll enter that into that one field. The next nurse may take the blood pressure and say 160/90, but the second nurse would put in the word blood pressure. Instead of the first one put BP, the second will put blood pressure. The third nurse will come in and then will just put 160/90. So there's inconsistency all in the same data set field. The AI, it chokes. It can't handle it. That's an example of bad data. So what we see in a lot of projects, especially in hospitals, where they say our data is great, or we have fantastic data, trust me, trust me, trust me, and it's not good data. So to make something, the AI, intelligent and work, it needs to have good data. And the analogy I like to use is, if any of you have kids, and I know Yeva has kids because we were talking about it, she has great kids because they play basketball. She has the best kids in the world, right? If Yeva raises her kids by feeding them candy for breakfast, she's not going to have very good, strong teenagers. What she gives them, it ends up being what they're going to be. So if you give the AI bad data, you're going to get a bad result. You give kid crappy food, it's then going to be a crappy person. You know what I mean? So the AI and kids, if you need to understand the whole thing, you have to focus on quality data to get a quality end result. And yeah, but I was trying to make up for all the insults we did during the practice run.
Very, very good. Can I continue a little bit, Vegard?
Yeah, please do, Eva.
I absolutely agree with Thomas. What you put in, that's what you get out. But another thing that's very important for building that technology and making value of it is the accessibility of that data and experimentation. Especially in the legacy business and successful legacy business like telcos, we are also experienced that our data access is not given and data quality is not given. So we need to work really hard to make sure that accessibility of important and strategic data is wide enough, and it's accessible to business people, it's accessible to data analysts and machine learning researchers. So, and another point I want to make is, it's very important to remember that AI is relatively new technology, and machine learning specifically when you build machine learning models based on data. So you need to provide experimentation space in the company to be able to build and test and see where actually that leading. So I would say our data quality, accessibility, fast and easy, and experimentation mindset.
Let me just jump on one thing. When she said build and test, just to jump to the analogy with kids, you let the kid try that and they fail, they try and fail. The same thing. When you look at AI, think of it as a child. It's the same type of experimentation you're doing, the learning process, right? It's not just the AI that's learning, but also the development team needs to learn. It's a little bit of a different way of working, right? So it's not just IT people. This is also including management. Management has to be part of the AI development as well. This is not just an IT project, because the AI could give a strategy. The end result could be something that can implement the strategy of the company. So therefore, the business people have to be in the project as well. I'm sorry, Vegard. Important data points.
This is great. We have a question coming up, but before we go into all the details, let's also, for those of you who are maybe not that familiar with AI is and what it can be used for, I think of it as three, main broad applications. One being what I call 100% quality and efficiency. So it's about automation, it's about quality assurance, it's about consistency, it's about security and system self-defense type of capabilities, right? So it's the efficiency and quality part. The second one is what I call customer centricity or user centricity on steroids. So it's really doing this mass adaptation to the individual in context. So it used to be the marketing people's wet dream that you could have, you can adapt your message to to the individual. But it's beyond that, because me as an individual is different now from when I'm waiting for the bus, except for outside COVID situation, and when I'm eating dinner with my family. So what I'm available for and interested in will change across those situations, and AI can help doing this personalization down to the context. And the third one, which I think is very interesting, is the let's say the augmented human judgment. So where you use AI to make better decisions, to support you in problem solving, in opportunity generation, ideation, the creative stuff. So the efficiency, the customer centricity, and sort of your intelligent colleague that helps you do your job better. So those are the three major categories of applications if I were to do that. Adriana, we have a question or two, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. We have actually two questions. One question is directed to Thomas, and the other one's for the entire panel. I'll start with the one for Thomas, because probably you can answer faster. It says, sounds like Thomas is thinking about quality equals consistency. Is it right observation?
Quality equals consistency. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Perfect. And I'll go to the next question. If you compare Watson with a human, I presume it's going up. For humans, it's possible to observe development and the personality traits. It is possible to observe similar developments in Watson. And if it does, he or she, what's the healthy growing up that Watson can offer?
Say the last part again. I'm sorry. He or she what?
If it does, she or he have a healthy growing up.
Oh,
that's what it's written.
Analogy. I'm trying to understand the question. So Watson, in terms of Watson or any AI to understand anything, it needs tremendous amount of examples. So let's just look at in terms of how an AI identifies an object or an animal, let's say a turtle, right? If you want an AI to identify a turtle, you're going to have to give it hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of pictures of turtles and different type of turtles. So understand that, and that's called training. That's training the AI. So when you ask a question, does an AI can understand people? For me to say yes, the amount of training you're going to have to do, the amount of examples you have to feed it, you and the team, and with each picture. So let's do an example of training, if I could. Perfect. Here we go. Spoon. We're going to train the AI to identify spoons. So you'll give it a picture of a spoon, and then in the text field you'll say, "This is a spoon. It is made of, its color is silver, and it has certain dimensions." Then you'll give another picture and another picture. And so an AI is not a human being. It is just code. It literally is just text, right? But after iterations of training with tens of more examples, when I'm saying examples, you should be on the order of tens of thousands to 100,000. If you get millions, is even better. And there is more, that way is more intelligent. So it's a long answer to your question, more technical maybe, but I'm trying to make it more realistic. That is not like you buy a DVD, you put like Microsoft Word or something, you put it in and it just works. You have to train the baby, right? Don't do that. Slow down, do this. And that's why I like using the analogy of the baby. It takes many, many years of consistency with your child. So before your child is a, wonderful human being. The same thing with an AI, but it doesn't take so many years. It just takes much, much faster. Sorry for that long answer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I would like to get a sense of where we are at, in getting it to, down to the specifics.
Yep.
So it would be great to hear one example of something you're working on within AI these days, or that is your favorite project sort of within the last couple of years, that shows something about the potential and potentially the challenges of AI. Just one brief example, and we'll go ladies first, Eva.
Thank you. So I will give you one concrete example. that we're working together with our university partners here in Norway. So we are developing an automatic speech recognizer based on conversational Norwegian speech with customer service data. The idea here is to automate customer service interactions that are endless. I mean, we have around 800 calls per day in Norway asking our typical questions on how to pay for my bill, or the network is not working, or I don't have good enough connectivity. So the idea here is to automate these customer interactions through building acoustic and language models. And here we would build the deep speech models are to actually be able to automatically translate spontaneous speech. And you may ask, well, isn't that Google doing it already? Well, Google is not performing yet at the level where we need to translate spontaneous small language as Norwegian. So why are we doing it? A little bit like what's in it? So Vegard, just to build on your three types of AI, with automatic speech recognizer, we could relieve our customer service from very repetitive tasks and actually be able to automate those. Instead, they could work on more intelligent tasks, solving problems for our customers. And second, of course, this is the customer centricity use case, because if we know and we translate about 90% of our customer data into text, we can do a lot of stuff. So we can do personal marketing campaign, we can solve problems, we can actually improve our customer service.
Thanks, that's a great example. And as a customer, I sincerely hope you succeed, right? So that would be great. Thomas, what are you working on these days, or what's your favorite example?
My favorite example is the example with a company called Yara. They're one of the largest fertilizer companies in the world. So we're working with Yara for a mobile app, so mobile phone for the African continent and for rural farmers. What they do is they download a mobile app, and that mobile app, and you turn it on, and that farmer may have just, if no Norwegians out there, maybe 5 mole by 5 mole, a couple of acres, not that much. And they want to know, what should I do in my land? What fertilizer? Should I water it? Should I not? They have no information. But with the app, what the app does is it finds out where they are on the planet Earth. It then goes into the history of the weather in that area right there, going back over 50 years. And then it then looks at another data set, and if it has any topographical information about the land, the texture of the land. So it gathers all this information and then tells the local farmer for where they're standing on the planet Earth. They'll say, well, first of all, we can predict for the next 5 days, this is what 80% certainty, this is the weather. So therefore you shouldn't water today because most likely you'll have rain this afternoon or in 2 days. And also, this is the type of fertilizer you should use if you're going to grow wheat. You should use this fertilizer if you're going to grow this. So now all of a sudden, a rural farmer who only makes a couple of dollars a week, right? We're talking about extremely poor people, now have the power of AI and everything in their hands so that they can increase their yield tremendously. And that's a really cool project because we're helping to feed the world, helping poor people to be wealthier. It's a great project.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm working on this from the research side and looking at different applications and how what it does to organizations. One specific case that I'm working on these days is with the company Spacemaker that was acquired by Autodesk earlier this week, and with OBOS, Norway's largest and one of Scandinavia's largest residential property developers. Because the Spacemaker software helps then property developers, architects, etc., in the early stage property development process, where you can experiment with different, how would you place different buildings, how high would you build each of the sections, etc., to estimate what can we do on a particular lot of land. And what happens to sunshine, light conditions, noise, the quality of outdoor areas, etc., etc. So you can simulate all these things to make better decisions and make better, houses and better living areas. Um, and and it's a fascinating case, because then it's not really about automation, but it's really about putting powerful tools into the hands of smart people and helping them accelerate the process towards better solutions. So I find that very fascinating. I'm doing interviews these days and following 3 different projects and see how it plays out in practice. So that's my favorite application, at least this week. Aljana, do we have some more questions?
Yeah, we actually have 6 questions now.
Oh my God.
I think I'll just follow the first question, and because it will be difficult to otherwise to pick up the best. The first question goes: how do you see the emerging of quantum computing and scaling the speed and adoption of IE in business processes?
Quantum computing, that's probably your department, Thomas.
Yeah, so it's going to accelerate it massively, extraordinarily, but it's not that easy. What people have to understand is that the code that you write and the code in the software you write for quantum computing is by itself. You cannot take a script or an algorithm you created in C++ or some normal platform and just plug it in. You have to rewrite. So we're actually writing new languages for the quantum computing world. So when we are more efficient, when the coding becomes more mature and the AI plugs in, it is going to be, then we under Star Trek, Star Wars, and all that stuff, right? Because then there's no delay in its thinking process. And when it goes into the quantum realm, then our laws of physics, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in the quantum realm. So, I mean, really gets amazing. So yeah, great question, but it's not that easy to do it, because quantum machines are so new that we're actually still in the early stages of just learning how to write code so a quantum machine can run the code. Yeah. So yeah, hope that's a good answer for you.
Great, thanks.
The next question.
Getting nerdy.
The next question: how do you plan for now and then to eliminate the human bias when you build out AI platforms?
Yeva, how do you do that? That's a simple question.
That is definitely not a very simple question. Well, first of all, you need to understand where the bias comes from. And the bias can come from data. The data that you feed in the algorithms can be biased, either biased towards our race, towards our sexual orientation, towards or anything, right? Or the biases can also be embedded in algorithms and algorithmic calculations. So, and it's a very difficult question. I mean, not the biggest techs of the world actually have managed to grasp this, so I can say. So the only solution I would say first is do research on that. I mean, this is important. That's a research question in itself. Number 2, really start to understand what type of data you feed your algorithms in, and if there are any accounts of biases. So do some probably intelligent testing and understanding of what data you actually feed in your black box. And also increasingly, I always say hire data scientists, and also train them, because data scientists increasingly, I'm a bit, critical to those, but we need those cross-functional studies in universities to teach data scientists what actually is the biases from technical point of view and social point of view. So sorry, I don't think I answered that question, but I probably gave some leads.
If I could add to that, thanks, Eva. I think this is really a leadership question, although it's also a technical question, it's a data quality question, but it's really about leadership. And we need to start realizing that all decisions are biased to some degree. And we as individuals, as human beings, we are also biased, and we have rules of thumb or heuristics that, some simple decision rules that helps us get through, every day, because if we were to think seriously about everything we are facing, we couldn't do anything, right? So it's really important. And sometimes it can be pretty accurate too. The point is really realizing that every human being and every algorithm is potentially biased. So how do we deal with that with people? Well, there's something about awareness, yes, but usually we do it by, approaching it collectively. So if you bring people together, diverse set of people that think differently and they have different biases, they might help out cancel their biases. And that is also something I think we need to do in terms of algorithms. First of all, realize that it's probably biased. Let's try to discover how biased it is and how we can deal with it. And then can it help us become less biased as human beings as well? So you could, deal with data in a systematic way. We can find ways of checking probably other algorithms for bias, and we need to have to, find ways of working with this and thinking of it as how can we use algorithms to complement our, strengths and weaknesses as human beings. And not be too scared that we discover that an algorithm was biased because the data was biased, obviously, because we are all. So let's try to find ways to uncover and map out these things and deal with it. And probably also diversity is an important part here. So we do the same thing in different ways, and then we can compare and we can maybe cancel out some of those biases. Eva.
Yeah, Vegard, I totally agree with you, but I also want to make a point here. Let's not make the bias as a panacea here. I mean, humans are biased. We make biased decisions. So we can ask machines to actually not make biased decisions. So we can technically adjust it, but that's not going to be ideal. So my proposal is actually what the European Commission's high-level expert group is proposing, and Commission itself, is like define the levels of risk. I mean, predicting or pairing drugs for diseases for humans is high level of risk. So you need to make sure that those biases that are either embedded in your data or in the algorithmic equations are minimized. But creating biases for your Shopify or a Spotify account, if you're actually not getting the right recommended songs on your Spotify account, how risky is that? And how concerned are we? So I think we should also try to start defining the level of risk that those biases present to us.
And I just add two little points. So there are software solutions for bias in AI. And IBM has the solution where it'll actually go into your code and look and try to find a bias and stuff like that. But also remember, on the human side, we all are biased. Being biased is human. Some people like red. Yeva likes blue. I don't know yet. I'm trying pink. I don't know. Whatever. Human beings are biased. It's what is the way we are. So don't try to rip out all the bias out of the code, because the end result is not going to reflect what human beings are. Right? We're unpredictable. We're irrational. How do you code irrationality? How do you code love? Try to code that. That's going to take you forever. Right? Why does this person fall in love with that person? This person falls in love with that one. Now write an algorithm for that. Right? So understand, bias is human, but also is very bad as well. We have enough examples of that. So sorry, but just want to give those.
And that was a perfect intro, Thomas, to introducing. There will be a hackathon just after this webinar where we'll actually code love. So you can all participate in that. Adriana, do we have more questions?
Yeah, we have already over 10 questions. So picking up the next one, sounds like closely related to the field of computational sustainability. Can you see many solutions that AI could solve within the field of sustainability? And how do you see this area to be in the next years?
Yeva is very eager to go for that question.
Yeah, I actually want to give one example that we are working in Telenor on. So we're working, 25% of our operational costs in networks, operating our hardware or base stations goes to energy. We use a lot of energy. So in some parts of the world, like Southeast Asia, we also still use, and many telcos still use, these diesel-driven generators. So what are we actually doing now? We are collecting data, so loads, of network loads on our base stations, and trying to look how much we can actually reduce the energy use on our base stations outside night and day shift. So apparently it's possible. We actually are able to find power saving windows during the daytime when the load on our networks are not so high. We can predict ahead of time, 24 hours ahead, or where the need for that capacity will be. And then based on that, we tune our networks or reconfigure our networks in order to save energy and do good for the society. So we reduce CO2 emission. And I think these type of energy projects, green energy projects, both from the telcos, but from many operators, will be more and more important.
Cool. Adriana, we have time for another question.
We might continue. Let's see. Why do you think business struggle with implementing IA into their business model? And it's just the lack of AI talent, or is it the fact that there's other factors that affect also?
Culture.
Thomas.
Culture. It's a cultured organization. The leadership intimidated by the unknown. What does this mean? And then the human factor. How does this AI affect my job? I'm a leader. I got 30 years of experience. What is this thing going to do to me? We see it over and over again that AI's implementation is slow into an organization because the leader group is quite scared, but it's not. It shouldn't be that scared. The way you should look at it is that AI is going to bring you insight and answers, and then your leader group and your experiencing that you have, you guys and girls could look at that answer and together go, interesting. Talk about it for a while, give the AI another challenge, another question, and then the AI comes back with an answer, and then all that experience, and then together, it's a together thing. And the way a lot of companies see it, they see it as like this separate, is AI, again, it's too much Hollywood, it's too much this separate entity. It's not, right? I like joking with people and leaders and say, listen, do you remember that version of you on a Friday night when you were in college and somebody knocked on your door and said, let's go out for drinking, and you went out drinking? Well, the AI is that version of you that stood there doing the homework, right? It's so just think of your company full of that great version of you. That's AI. So really the what we see is that companies, they think it's going to challenge the culture, and it doesn't. It's just a more insightful employee. It's not that scary. That's what we see over and over again. Leaders need to embrace it and not be so scared. It's not a Terminator type thing.
But I think actually you're onto something important there, because the fear out there is real, and in some geographies more than others. We did a survey a couple of years back on AI and management and expectations and fears and etc. And we were surprised that even among managers internationally, more than a third said they fear that AI would threaten their jobs. And we saw also an important pattern there, because we had this idea that technology skills would make people less fearful and have higher expectations. It wasn't that simple. So we measured it in two ways. One was, how often do you follow technology news? How informed are you? That boosted people's expectations, did nothing to their fears, statistically speaking too. The other way we measured it was, do you adapt technology to your needs? So specifically trying to sort of avoid sort of favoring, engineers or something and hotel people not, then, when you get a new digital device, do you use the standard settings or do you make adjustments? And then we saw a very clear pattern that those who did adjustments, those who adapt technology to their needs, whether it's at work or any other context, they are less fearful. But they're not having higher unrealistic expectations for AI. So the simple takeaway is really that if you want to do something about fear, give people skills and experience. Information won't cut it. And I think it's really two critical stages in you know, adopting AI in an organization, and it's just as simple as how do you get in shape. It's really about two things: start training and continue to do it. And with AI, it's really the first step, which is tricky for a lot of organizations. It's actually starting and to experiment and embracing this culture of experimentation and database decision making, etc. You know, that has some implications. The second one is really about the scaling and getting from pilots to performance, and that requires a different skill set. And I think probably Thomas and Eva can tell more about what that really takes. But those are quite different. But you need to go, you know, through both steps and nurture both this culture and the skills of experimentation and trying things out, and then knowing how to take it from a successful experiment into successful, you know, a large-scale performance. Eva.
I want to add one thing, and I really believe in that. I mean, we need to demystify AI. Where does that cultural shock and fear comes from? If you ask the top managers in any company today, what is AI? Guess what kind of associations and connotations these people have, with all respect to their fantastic way of running the business. They perhaps think about self-driving cars. They think about people with kind of robots around them. I'm not saying them all, but we are actually too much mystifying that technology. Instead, I would even say, I mean, look at your problems and think of what type of predictions on big data you can actually allow machines to do instead of humans. Be so specific and down to business. So I'm really happy to see that the HBR and all type of literature that top management is reading today actually goes down and says, look, all the hype about AI is over. Now let's do the work. Let's do the business, specify the problems you actually can solve, think of your data, make sure you actually think of data as a strategic good, similar as you do about your FTEs. So, and then you start building. So I think so. My point, demystify this technology. That's where the fear comes.
We have lots of questions and we have lots of opinions, and at least two of us have lots of insights. I would like to make sure that as we close in now, that I would like to get your, you know, 1, 2, or 3 top advice for leaders and prospective leaders for how to lead the AI-powered organization. And maybe we'll just synthesize some of the discussions we've had already, or maybe there are a couple of things we have not covered. Thomas, would you like to start?
Actually, I really would like Eva to start. I've been doing so much talking, and I'm trying. Ladies first.
Let's go with Eva then.
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, 3 things. The first thing, think of data as strategic good. Indeed, data is everything and in anything, but you need to start looking at what is your data that is strategic for you? What the data that you have in-house and you don't have what you need? What kind of labeling you need to do in order to make any predictions or any intelligence put on the data? Lots of questions. That's one. Number 2, hire data scientists and train your business leaders of technology. And that's not only about machine learning, it's about how do you interpret the results? What kind of machine learning flow are available? Start there. So don't forget, train your leaders and hire more data analysts on analytics and machine learning people. And third, you know, try to build a culture of experimentation. If you really want to scale with AI, move out of proof of concepts and sort of just ideas, you need to set up your organization for experimentation. And you know, it's easy to say for small companies and startups, they are born digital. They know how to experiment. They know Scrum in their heads and hands. But for large companies, this is still a challenge. So I would start there. My 3 cents.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Eva. Thomas, your top 2 or 3 advice.
That was amazing, Eva. That was really good. So The soft skills is probably, I want to piggyback on a bunch of things that Yeva said, because I think so, what you said, Yeva, was so fantastic. I just want to add to them. What we see in terms of leader groups, I talk to so many leader groups, and with all full respect, a lot of leader groups have taken a company from a small little organization to a global organization. They've done a wonderful job. But they're not like what Yeva said, they're startups where they were born with IP addresses, internet, they've all had that. These guys came from, and girls, most of the time is a lot of old men. They came from nothing in the factory and they built it up, right? Understand this. Your leader group has done a wonderful job in bringing you from where you were to where you are today. But in regards to from today going forward with AI, with quantum, with all these things, they're incompetent. It's not an insult. It's just a fact. They grew up in a different world. They still have a place, but understand that things have changed drastically. So with that, I want to emphasize that what I see in successful companies today who make that transition from the factory mindset to this internet mindset is that leadership, not being a boss, not, every Friday, where's the KPI call, have you delivered and all that, but true leadership, taking care of your employees, the soft skills, listening to people. With this internet world and AI and all that, the AI is going to do a lot of work. And when it comes back with that answer, it's the human element. Remember I talked about the fact that we can't predict things as humans, where we do things irrational, all these things. And these great leaders, if you're a good leader and you get to pull together all your talent of all your people, all their characteristics as people, and this wonderful data that you got there, AI, that combination will take your company this way. So for me, my biggest advice is culture on top of this wonderful data, but that culture part, the people, that is the most winning combination going forward.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Thomas. And I think we see in building on that, I think if I were to come up with a couple of advice. One, make sure that you as a leader and your workforce is bilingual. What does that mean? Who's doing the work in your organization? People and technology. What do you need to know? People and technology. Who do you need to speak to, so to speak? People and technology. And I think we have accepted, until quite recently, managers saying, I don't need to know technology because our IT department is great. That is just as silly as saying, I don't need to treat people well because we have a great HR department. It doesn't have to, to be a great leader, you don't have to be a psychologist nor a data scientist, but you have to show interest and have a basic understanding of both. And how we can, what types of tasks and questions can people solve and answer? What can technology do? And how can we combine smart technology with smart people? So that is the bilingual part. And I think it actually goes down to each individual in the organization. It's not just the leaders. I think we need to do that. The second one is really hone in on your judgment skills. Do I say you need to be judgmental? No, but it's really about what is AI fantastic at? Well, it's data intensive routine work. So anything routine, particularly administrative work. So what's left for leaders then, and the work remaining in organizations, it's some form of, complex problem solving, opportunity spotting, innovation work, things that we need judgment and social skills and ability to lead creative processes. And I think that is really also super important here, that we build that human experience and expertise and ethical reasoning and empathy and holistic thinking that allows us to use these super smart specialist AI algorithms together with some great people to achieve great things that is not only accurate but is also meaningful. Focusing on good judgment and building that, and even training your people in that and rewarding them when they show good judgment and critical thinking. I think that is super important. I think we've spent our time now. And we will not take more time of the rest of your day. It was a pleasure spending the morning or afternoon or whatever it is in your time zone with you. And I would like to thank Yeva and Thomas for the great inputs, you for all the fantastic questions, much more questions that we were able to answer and cover. And thanks to Adriana for hosting this. So have a great day or a great evening, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you very much for everybody. We have 24 questions that were not answered. So I assume the Prologue will have chapter 2 of this webinar. I hope you're into that. And everybody, thank you very much. Your questions were noted, but please send us an email if there's any particular question you want to put to the panel. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.